Hey there, this is Dr. Matthew Brackney of Spine and Sports Therapy. Today I wanted to create a short video regarding the micronutrient vitamin D. So vitamin D is a really important micronutrient. It has a lot of different aspects on how it supports our body's physiology. Vitamin D has actually been associated, low vitamin D I should say, a deficiency in vitamin D has been associated with a wide variety of medical conditions, including diabetes, even some cancers, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, low back pain, dementia. So several different aspects of diseases, especially chronic diseases, have been associated with low vitamin D. That doesn't mean that vitamin D causes them. It just means it's a part of the problem. It's an association versus a causation. So it's been associated with all of those different chronic medical conditions. I first started paying attention to vitamin D more and more about it and studying it more and more a few years ago because I would have certain patients that just simply wouldn't respond to my therapies like I knew they should. So they were patients that had chronic pain. They had chronic low back pain, chronic hip pain, chronic neck pain, just pain for a long time. It wasn't even associated with a particular injury. It was just an ache. Certain very similar type symptoms to people that have fibromyalgia. Just pain that just doesn't seem to go away. It's just always there. So I would treat these patients and they'd feel like a little bit better, but after a few sessions, they just weren't getting the kind of relief that I knew they should. So I found out that low vitamin D is associated with chronic pain. So I would start checking these patients' vitamin D status with a very simple blood test, and sure enough, they had very low vitamin D, several of them. And so we began to use vitamin D as a tool, and after a few weeks, they began to experience improvements. And after a few months, their pain, many of those patients, their pain, some of them completely went away, and some of them improved significantly. I've seen that time and time again throughout my practice. Patients with chronic pain, they just don't respond to therapy. I always check their vitamin D, and when they have low vitamin D, we use vitamin D as a tool to help their body, and I've seen some really good results with that. So vitamin D has a lot of important impacts and ways it affects our physiology. Today I just want to focus in on the immune system and how vitamin D impacts our immune system. I think it's a very important conversation for us to be having. Now, my goal with this is not to make any medical claims or to have you self-diagnose yourself. My goal is simply to provide education and knowledge regarding this topic and also provide you with the evidence. So most importantly, so everything I'm talking about today, I've gotten from evidence, I've gotten from science, I've gotten from research articles. So vitamin D is actually very well studied. In PubMed.gov, for example, there's over 89,000 individual studies. There's over 13,000, almost 14,000 systematic reviews, which are considered the highest level of evidence because they look at a wide range of individual studies and they create recommendations or regarding conclusions based on all of those individual studies. So systematic reviews are very important. There's over 13,000 of those just on vitamin D alone, and quite a few on vitamin D and our immune system and how it affects and interplays with our immune system. So again, I'll share that information with you. I'll share the exact articles that you can take a look at for yourself. I think it's important that we have all of the available knowledge and information so that we can make the best possible decisions just in general. So that's what we'll talk about today. Like I mentioned, vitamin D is very well studied. There's a lot of evidence. I'm just going to move the camera here just a little bit regarding vitamin D. It's considered a pro-hormone. So what that means is hormones are released by parts of our body to tell other areas of our body to do something, to increase the production of an enzyme or another hormone, or it tells that another body area to turn down a certain area and turn off certain genes that they're making or proteins that they're making. Vitamin D actually acts in a very similar way. It goes into our cells and it tells certain genes to turn off, turns certain genes to turn on, and this is unlike other vitamins. Other vitamins are considered coenzymes. They usually help enzymes in a certain enzyme reaction. Well, vitamin D has a much higher status, if you will, in our body, is in that it's able to even go into our genetic material and turn on and off certain genes. So very, very high level of access, if you will. So that's an important thing to mention, that it acts very differently than other vitamins. So I'm going to talk about two main things here that vitamin D does in regards to influencing our immune system. So one, it's been shown to increase the activity of antimicrobial peptides. So antimicrobial peptides are very important little molecules that are produced by some of our white blood cells called neutrophils and macrophages. They're the first line of defense when a pathogen or bad guy, a virus or bacteria or fungi comes into our system. Then these neutrophils and macrophages will go in and begin to attack that pathogen. One of the ways they do that is they use antimicrobial peptides. One in particular that vitamin D has shown to influence and increase the production of are called cathelicidins. Very important to remember that. So cathelicidins are potent antimicrobial peptides, and they have antimicrobial effects, as its name implies. Antimicrobial means microbes are a general term for viruses, bacteria, fungi, essentially. And peptide is just another word for protein, essentially. So antimicrobial peptides and cathelicidins. So they help, vitamin D helps increase the ability of those white blood cells to create these antimicrobial peptides, which fight against bacteria and viruses, any microbe that comes into our system. Next, very important thing that vitamin D does, like I mentioned before, vitamin D goes into our genes and it can turn on and turn off certain things. So this first one it does is it turns on the gene to make more antimicrobial peptides. And the second one, it actually turns off the NF-kappa beta pathway. That stands for nuclear transcription factor kappa beta. This is a well-known transcription factor. This is an enzyme that is pro-inflammatory. It actually supports inflammation and increases the inflammatory response, which some inflammation is good. We all need inflammation. It's an important part of the healing process. But too much inflammation can be a bad thing. So if there's too much inflammation, that can cause issues as well. So vitamin D actually inhibits and turns off this pro-inflammatory pathway. So that's really important. And you'll notice how vitamin D, how it's the way it's used is it has a certain, I don't know if intelligence is the right word, but it knows that it needs to increase and turn on the genes that activate antimicrobial peptides, and it has the wherewithal to turn off this pro-inflammatory process when inflammation is too much. So very interesting aspect of vitamin D. Again, very important. Those two things influence our immune system and influence how our immune system reacts to certain pathogens. And I think this is something that more people should be aware of. I'll go ahead and share the information with you. Like I mentioned, so there's several systematic reviews. Some of the most impressive systematic reviews are on acute respiratory distress syndrome. So there's a few, actually, several, that show how vitamin D can actually prevent acute respiratory distress syndrome. So pneumonias and just inflammation in our lungs, vitamin D has actually been shown to decrease that or prevent that. So especially when people have low vitamin D. When people have low vitamin D, they're impacted more. When their vitamin D is normal or they supplement with vitamin D, that's improved. So important thing to realize. Number two, I just wanted to mention vitamin D can be gotten through food, but you can't. There's not a whole lot to be achieved through food. Eggs, some fish, some mushrooms have vitamin D. Most people think of getting sunlight, so UVB, ultraviolet B rays, can activate our endogenous system to create more vitamin D. The only concern with that is that you need to get most of your body. Most of your body needs to be exposed to skin, not just your arms and your face, for example. Most of your body needs to be exposed to sunlight, and for about 20 minutes. And that just simply isn't practical for most people. Most people aren't outside in the sun with most of their body exposed for those lengths of times on any sort of regular basis. But that would be the recommendation. If it's a good sunny day out, you can go in your backyard and get most of your body exposed to sunlight. That's a really good way to stimulate vitamin D production endogenously. Vitamin D supplementation has been shown to be very safe and very effective. So that would be something I strongly recommend people at least consider if they have low vitamin D and just in general. So it's an important nutrient to make sure that we're getting. Like I said, if we're not getting it through sunlight, if we're not getting it through food, then supplementation would be the next logical step. And like I said, it's been shown to be safe and effective. So those are some things I wanted to mention. I'm going to share that evidence with you. Feel free to take a look at these articles and read them for yourselves. I always recommend doing your own research when investigating any sort of topic. This is no different from that. But I think it's very important to talk about these things because they're very important for our overall health, especially our immune system, and especially our lungs. So I'll go ahead and share these things with you so you guys can take a look at them. But thanks so much for tuning on, and have a great rest of your day. Adios.